In the stillness of a peaceful village night, a horrific murder shattered the tranquility, tearing through the veil of serenity and revealing the darkest corners of human nature. Behind the mysterious death on the railway tracks lies a story layered with tragedy, where love turns to hatred, suppressed secrets become sharp blades, and jealousy leads to the abyss of crime. Meng Jin, a woman carrying unspeakable pain, and Liang Shinji, a husband willing to do anything to protect his family, found themselves at a crossroads of truth and made a fateful mistake. As the secrets of the past slowly unraveled, a seemingly perfect plan was devised to conceal the crime. Yet even the smallest clues, a discarded blanket, a stray hair, brought the police closer to the horrifying truth. Stay tuned until the end of the video as we uncover the dramatic details of this case. Horrifying train track accident. At approximately 5:15 a.m. on September 6th, with light fog lingering and dawn barely breaking, train X567 quietly departed from Nanjing. The train sped along the railway cutting through the remote countryside of Zhenjiang County, Jiangsu Province. On both sides lay vast fields and barren lands, with no signs of nearby residences. The endless railway stretched through desolate landscapes, familiar territory for experienced train operators. Zhang Weiqing, a conductor with over 25 years of experience, kept the train running smoothly at a steady speed. The early morning train carried hundreds of passengers, most of whom were still deep in slumber. The calm was pierced only by the rhythmic clatter of wheels on the tracks and the steady hum of the engine echoing through the outskirts. Around 5:30 a.m., as the train prepared to cross a small iron bridge over a canal, the train's headlights suddenly illuminated an unusual object on the tracks. Initially, Mr. Zhang assumed it was just a minor obstruction, but as the train approached, the image grew clearer and more terrifying. A person lay stretched across the tracks. Mr. Zhang's heart clenched. He yanked the brake lever in a desperate attempt to stop the train in time. The brakes screeched. The wheels gripped the tracks, but the momentum was too great to halt the train immediately. A faint shudder beneath his feet confirmed that something dreadful had occurred. Though he knew it was too late, Mr. Zhang remained calm, reduced the speed, and reported the incident via radio to the control center. Safety regulations forbade stopping the train mid-route, so Mr. Zhang decided to continue to the nearest station, Yangzhou Station, about 8 kilometers away. The short journey took only 5 to 7 minutes, but the air on the train was heavy with silence and tension. Upon arrival at Yangzhou Station, Zhang Weiqing and several staff members disembarked to inspect the train. A large blood stain marred the front of the train, smeared where it had struck the tracks, trailing off in chilling streaks. In the dim morning light, the dark crimson stood out starkly against the dull metal, sending a chill through everyone's spine. The control center, upon receiving the report from train X567, immediately pinpointed the location of the incident. As soon as they were notified, railway police and the local investigation team rushed to the scene. Tension hung thick in the air as all eyes turned to the tracks. Before them lay the body of a man, sprawled haphazardly, bearing clear marks of devastation. Clues at the scene, signs of a suicide. The incident took place along a railway line cutting through the outskirts of Jiangxi Province. The area is desolate, with small, widely spaced houses appearing only occasionally. Surrounding the scene are rolling hills and dense, overgrown bushes, creating a gloomy and eerily silent atmosphere. A preliminary examination revealed that the victim's face had been severely disfigured, with blood pooling extensively on the ground. Scattered droplets trailed along the tracks. Shredded and dirt-stained pieces of the victim's clothing were caught on the rails, indicating that the body had been dragged a considerable distance by the train. The victim was found lying on their back. The face was swollen and bruised beyond recognition. Severe head trauma exposed fragments of the skull. The chest and abdomen were crushed, with torn skin revealing internal tissues. The arms were deformed and no longer retained their natural shape. The lower body, however, remained relatively intact, suggesting that the primary impact occurred on the upper torso. The victim was wearing a gray t-shirt and blue jeans, now shredded and stained with blood. Due to the extensive facial injuries and the absence of identification documents, establishing the victim's identity was difficult. An initial assessment indicated the victim was approximately 165 centimeters tall, had black hair, was barefoot, and had an oval-shaped brown birthmark on the calf measuring about 3 to 5 millimeters. Investigators spoke with Zhang Wei-Qing, the train operator, to gather more details. Still visibly shaken, Mr. Zhang recounted in a trembling voice, "When I saw the object on the tracks, I immediately sounded the horn as a warning. At first, I didn't think it was a person, just an obstacle of some kind. But as the train got closer, I realized it was a person. I tried to brake urgently, but the train couldn't stop in time. The horn blared repeatedly, but the person didn't move. I just hoped they would get up or move. But they didn't." Based on Mr. Zhang's testimony and the evidence at the scene, police initially hypothesized the cause of death. The position of the body lying squarely across the tracks and the victim's posture suggested this was unlikely to be an accident. It seemed probable that the victim deliberately laid down on the tracks, an act commonly associated with suicide. Upon examining the condition of the body, investigators noted there were no signs of a struggle or resistance. As the victim remained supine, this posture indicated a willingness to accept their fate. Blood patterns around the body and remnants of torn clothing on the tracks further supported this hypothesis. The section of railway where the body was found was in a remote, sparsely traveled area with no witnesses to the event. This led investigators to suspect that the victim had chosen this isolated location to end their life, away from prying eyes. The blanket discarded in the bushes and unusual details. Although many details aligned with the suicide hypothesis, the police meticulously considered all aspects of the case. Forensic doctors conducted a preliminary examination and discovered several unusual signs on the victim's body. The post-mortem lividity on the back and calves, ranging in color from light purple to dark purple-black, indicated that the victim had been dead for at least several hours before being discovered. Furthermore, the victim's blood was no longer bright red, as is typical in recent deaths, but had turned a dark purplish-black. The combination of lividity patterns and the abnormal blood color led investigators to suspect that the victim might have died before being struck by the train. Another noteworthy detail was that the victim was barefoot. There were no signs of shoes or sandals at the scene. This absence raised suspicions. Did the victim leave home in a hurry, or was their body brought here after death? This prompted a new hypothesis. If the victim was already dead when placed on the tracks, who brought the body there? Where had the victim been before this location? Could the victim have been forced to leave another place under duress? The scene showed no signs of a struggle or physical altercation. However, upon expanding the search radius to 100 meters, the police discovered a pink and white floral blanket discarded in the bushes. The blanket was relatively clean, undamaged, and unstained, suggesting it had been recently used. Its presence near the scene raised a slew of new questions. Who left it there? And why was a blanket found near the site of the incident? The investigators immediately seized the blanket as a critical piece of evidence. They began to lean toward the hypothesis that this was not a suicide, but a homicide with concealed motives. Authorities continued their investigation by interviewing residents living near the railway tracks. This sparsely populated suburban area was home to only a few scattered families, making information gathering exceptionally difficult. Investigators visited each household, but most residents reported not seeing or hearing anything suspicious around the time of the incident. This area was known for its tranquility and isolation. At night, the absence of streetlights plunged the surroundings into deeper darkness and silence. Residents seldom ventured outside after dark. The lack of witnesses and surveillance cameras further complicated and obscured the investigation. Forensic conclusion: homicide. After completing the initial examination at the scene, the victim's body was transported to the forensic facility for a more thorough autopsy. Forensic doctors began analyzing critical factors to determine the cause and time of death. Rigor mortis, the stiffening of the muscles after death, was one of the first indicators examined. This process typically starts 2 to 6 hours after death and peaks between 12 to 24 hours. Upon inspection, the doctors found signs of muscle stiffness in the victim, though full rigidity had not yet set in. Another crucial indicator was the color of the blood. The victim's blood had turned dark purple-black, indicating that coagulation and decomposition had already begun. Based on these details, the forensic team concluded that the victim had died approximately 8 to 10 hours before being discovered, placing the time of death on the night of September 5th. Upon examining the body, the doctors did not find any clear fatal injuries such as stab wounds or significant head trauma. However, the victim's neck showed severe damage, making it difficult to pinpoint a specific cause of death. Notably, bruising on the fingertips and toes suggested signs of mechanical asphyxia, a condition caused by a lack of oxygen due to strangulation or compression. These bruises occur when blood circulation is restricted, potentially indicating that the victim was restrained or strangled before death. The hypothesis of death by asphyxiation gained further support. The forensic team concluded that the victim likely died from strangulation or another form of mechanical asphyxia. An examination of the victim's stomach contents revealed a large amount of undigested food, including fried dishes, grilled items, and a significant quantity of alcohol. This indicated that the victim had consumed food and drink shortly before their death. The autopsy findings provided critical clues. The undigested food suggested that the victim ate 2 to 4 hours before dying. Fatty foods typically take longer to digest. Supporting this time frame, the presence of a large amount of alcohol added another layer of mystery to the case. The victim's alcohol consumption not only reflected their physical and mental state at the time, but also suggested they may have been intoxicated, impairing their judgment and control, making them vulnerable to danger or attack. These findings raised numerous questions. Did the victim attend a gathering or meet someone before their death? These uncertainties made the case even more complex. However, one conclusion was certain to the police: this was not a suicide. All the evidence from the scene and the autopsy pointed unequivocally to a homicide. The birthmark on the leg, revealing the victim's identity. The top priority now was to identify the victim. Police utilized images of the body along with distinguishing features such as height, clothing, and the birthmark on the victim's left leg to gather information. They launched an investigation in the nearest village, Fengwei, located not far from the scene. Additionally, the police collaborated with the media, issuing press releases and calling for help from the community. These efforts soon yielded results. Several residents of Fengwei village, after viewing the images, suspected that the victim was Zhao Xiaocheng, a 38-year-old man from the village. Zhao Xiaocheng was known for his reclusive nature and minimal interaction with neighbors. His marriage was troubled. His wife and child had left him to return to her mother's home. This information immediately drew the attention of the investigation team. They quickly proceeded to Zhao Xiaocheng's residence. The house was silent, showing no signs of occupancy. Neighbors were unaware of his whereabouts. While awaiting further leads, the police decided to visit the home of Zhao Xiaocheng's parents, located about 1 kilometer away. When they arrived at Mr. Zhao's home, his face went pale upon hearing the tragic news. His hands trembled as he clutched his phone. desperately trying to call his son, but each attempt ended in failure. The silence between the ringing tones only deepened his growing dread. When the police presented a photo of the victim, Mr. Zhao's eyes filled with tears. Despite the disfigurement in the image, one unmistakable detail remained: the birthmark on the left leg. It was a cruel confirmation. He nodded, his body nearly collapsing under the weight of grief. The police took Mr. Zhao and his wife to the station for a formal identification of the body. The harsh truth was laid bare. Zhao Xiaocheng was gone forever. As the shock and sorrow settled in, pressing questions emerged. To uncover the reasons behind Xiaocheng's death, the police began a deeper investigation into his life and relationships. They questioned Mr. and Mrs. Zhao, hoping for any clues. Through tearful sighs and broken voices, the elderly couple recounted the dark periods in their son's life. Zhao Xiaocheng's life drowned in alcohol. Since the day his wife and child left, Zhao Xiaocheng changed completely. He immersed himself in alcohol, as if it were the only escape from his profound loneliness. During the day, he continued to work, but when night fell, his house filled with the clinking of glasses and self-pitying laments. Friends occasionally visited, but what began as cheerful drinking sessions turned into bitter conversations. Xiaocheng often spoke of his wife and child with eyes full of regret and sadness. When drunk, he would lament about his bleak life, confessing that he no longer wanted to live. His friends were worried, but they reassured themselves that these were merely the ramblings of a man inebriated by sorrow. Neighbors reported often seeing Xiaocheng sitting alone, staring blankly out the window, a trembling hand clutching a glass of liquor. His parents, Mr. and Mrs. Zhao, tried repeatedly to counsel him, but all their efforts were in vain. About 2 weeks ago, however, Xiaocheng seemed to have changed. He started going out more often, participating in social activities, and appeared to be trying to improve himself. During one gathering with friends, he unexpectedly asked about buying gifts for women. The question sparked curiosity. Everyone assumed he was reconciling with his ex-wife, but Xiaocheng only smiled, shook his head, and said nothing more. The police decided to contact Su Tianyu, Xiaocheng's wife. Her voice was heavy with sorrow as she explained that their relationship had shown no signs of improvement. The emotional wounds were still fresh. The insults, drunken outbursts, and fits of rage still haunted her nights. For her safety and that of their young daughter, she had no choice but to leave. She admitted that she still cared for Xiaocheng, but fear prevented her from returning. When the police searched Zhao Xiaocheng's home, there were no signs of a struggle or altercation. Everything in the house remained in place. On the table, his mobile phone lay silent. The police immediately charged it and powered it on, hoping to uncover a vital clue. The affair and the first suspect. When the phone screen lit up, a series of missed calls and messages appeared, all from a number saved under the affectionate name My Love. The police delved deeper. The communication between Xiaocheng and this number began on August 16th, just weeks before his death. The frequency of calls and messages was high, indicating intense interaction. Crucially, this number did not belong to Su Tianyu, Xiaocheng's wife. Suspecting an affair, the police quickly identified the owner of the number, Lu Maxue, a 29-year-old woman living in Chenglin, a neighboring village near Fengwei, where Xiaocheng's body was discovered. The police summoned Lu Maxue for questioning. In the interrogation room, Maxue calmly admitted to the relationship with Xiaocheng. She explained that they met by chance in mid-August and quickly grew close. Xiaocheng was kind and considerate toward her. They often texted, called, and met whenever they had free time. Maxue insisted there were no conflicts between them before the incident. Maxue acknowledged that she knew Xiaocheng was married, but that didn't deter her. From the beginning, Xiaocheng had been open about his broken marriage. explaining that his wife had left and no longer wanted to reconcile. However, as police dug deeper into Liu Mashue's background, they uncovered a surprising fact. Ma Xue was also married. Her husband, Li Wenxiang, frequently traveled for work. Their marriage had long been strained, with rumors in Changlin suggesting that Xiang had an affair and often neglected his family. Despite the lack of affection, Li Wenxiang was known for his extreme possessiveness. He could not tolerate the thought of Ma Xue having any intimate relationships with other men. His jealousy surfaced every time he returned to the village and heard rumors about men visiting his wife, even if they were just relatives. The police continued investigating Liu Mashuo and those connected to her. Neighbors reported that when Xiang came home, he would thoroughly inspect the house and question Mashuo about anyone who visited during his absence. His possessiveness and jealousy created a constant atmosphere of suspicion. Despite the emotional distance between them, the involvement of Zhao Xiaocheng in Ma Xue's life raised a new hypothesis. Could Xiang's blind jealousy have led to this tragedy? The police began investigating Xiang's whereabouts on September 5th, the night linked to Xiaocheng's death. However, his co-workers and workplace records confirmed that Xiang stayed at his dormitory that night. The geographical distance made it impossible for him to have traveled quickly enough to the crime scene. As a result, the police ruled out Li Wenxiang as a suspect. The turning point, the victim's dark secret. As the investigation into Xiaocheng's social relationships continued, the police received a crucial piece of information from Su Tianyu, his ex-wife. After a long, painful pause, Tianyu finally decided to disclose a secret she had buried deep within her heart. With a sigh and eyes filled with anguish, she revealed the real reason her marriage had collapsed. Everything began on a rainy afternoon last year. That day, Tianyu's younger sister, Meng Jin, had come for a visit. Exhausted and suffering from a mild cold, Meng Jin arrived at their home just as the rain intensified. Concerned for her sister, Tianyu rushed out in the downpour to buy medicine. However, due to slippery roads, she had a minor accident and returned home later than expected. When she walked in, the atmosphere felt heavy and oppressive. Meng Jin sat on the couch, eyes filled with tears, her face a mask of fear and despair. Her clothes were disheveled, suggesting something horrifying had just occurred. Tianyu rushed to comfort her sister and gently asked what had happened. Between choke sobs, Meng Jin confessed the painful truth. While Tianyu was out, Xiaocheng had entered the room, restrained, and assaulted her. Tianyu was paralyzed with shock and rage. The pain and fury consumed her. When confronted, Xiaocheng blamed his actions on drunkenness and even accused Meng Jin of causing the incident by being in the couple's bedroom. He showed no remorse, his demeanor cold and distant toward both his wife and sister-in-law. For the family's honor and Meng Jin's future, Tianyu chose not to reveal the incident. The sisters shared their sorrow in silence, vowing to keep the secret. But from that moment, the marriage was beyond saving. Tension smothered Tianyu's life, and she eventually left Xiaocheng, taking her daughter in search of peace. Meng Jin, too, swore never to see her brother-in-law again. Outwardly, she appeared normal, but her heart seethed with resentment and shame. The memory of that night haunted her, an unending source of pain. Currently, Meng Jin lives with her husband, Liang Shinji, and their young son, Liang Shinren. However, the shadow of the past lingers. Just a week after the assault, in a moment of despair, Meng Jin turned to Liang Shinji, her devoted friend who had long loved her. That night, clouded by alcohol, they slept together. When she discovered she was pregnant, Meng Jin and Shinji decided to marry and raise the child together. Their life seemed peaceful until 2 months ago, when Meng Jin confided in her sister. She nervously admitted that she suspected Shinren might be Xiaocheng's son. Tianyu had considered the same possibility when she noticed the boy's resemblance to her ex-husband. Both sisters remained silent, But doubts grew. Even Shinji's family began questioning why Shinran bore no resemblance to him. This revelation prompted the police to shift their focus to Meng Jin and Shinji. They realized that unraveling the relationship between Xiao Cheng, Meng Jin, and Shinji was crucial to solving the case. Investigating Shinji, they found him to be a strong-willed man fiercely protective of his family. The origin of Blanket, the killer unmasked. The meeting with Liang Shinji and Meng Jin took place in a setting that was calm yet serious. Shinji sat composed, while Meng Jin was visibly tense, her eyes filled with anxiety and fear. Both insisted that on the night of September 5th, they had dinner, watched a movie, and slept at home until the following morning. However, this assertion did not reassure the police, who suspected they were colluding to fabricate an alibi. During the investigation, the police uncovered a suspicious detail. At 6 p.m. on September 5th, Meng Jin had left her son with her mother and didn't return to pick him up until the following morning. This unusual act of leaving an infant overnight without a clear reason hinted that Meng Jin might have been preparing for something. Further inquiries led to a key revelation from Mrs. Wang, the owner of a convenience store near Meng Jin and Shinji's home. At noon on September 6th, Meng Jin visited the store to buy a thick blanket. The blanket was priced at 80 yuan, but Meng Jin haggled for a lower price of 70 yuan. She remarked that just 2 months prior, she had purchased a similar blanket at the same price, chiding Mrs. Wang for overcharging her like a stranger. Mrs. Wang found it odd that Meng Jin needed another blanket so soon after buying one. Meng Jin's explanation was that the old blanket wasn't warm enough for the upcoming winter. This detail immediately reminded the police of the pink and white floral blanket found near the crime scene. Upon forensic examination, they discovered a short black hair embedded in the fabric. DNA analysis confirmed that it belonged to the victim, Xiao Cheng. The fact that Meng Jin bought a new blanket just hours after Xiao Cheng's death raised suspicions. Could the blanket have been used to cover up something sinister on that fateful night? The puzzle pieces were coming together, and the full picture of the tragedy was almost complete. Armed with this evidence, the police summoned Liang Shinji and Meng Jin back to the station for further questioning. Investigators probed deeply into Meng Jin's past relationship with Xiao Cheng, focusing on the events of September 5th, when she left her son with her mother. They also pressed her about the purchase of the new blanket on September 6th, mere hours after Xiao Cheng's death. The tension between Shinji and Meng Jin grew palpable. Detectives sensed they were hiding a crucial secret. Under relentless pressure and faced with undeniable evidence, Meng Jin finally broke down, confessing through tears. She admitted that she and her husband had conspired to murder Xiao Cheng. Her confession left Shinji with no room to hide. Bowing his head, his voice dropped to a whisper as he acknowledged the full truth. The pinnacle of fury and the decision to kill. Shinji recounted how his suspicions had grown when he noticed that his son did not resemble him. His parents also expressed doubts, their eyes clouded with uncertainty each time they looked at their grandson. Though turmoil raged inside him, Shinji remained calm, gently probing Meng Jin for answers. During long nights filled with whispered conversations and Shinji's tender reassurances, Meng Jin finally unburdened herself. She revealed the trauma that had haunted her for over a year. The night her brother-in-law, Xiao Cheng, had assaulted her. The pain, shame, and fear of judgment had driven her into silent torment. Hearing this, Shinji's heart ached with anguish. He couldn't fathom the suffering his beloved wife had endured. The thought of her carrying this monstrous secret alone, repressing her fear and humiliation, only deepened his resolve to protect her from the past. Shinji tried to explain to his family that the boy might resemble him more as he grew older. He clung to the hope that time would ease their doubts. But when Xiao Cheng began appearing near their home, everything spiraled into crisis again. Each encounter filled Meng Jin with paralyzing fear. Xiao Cheng's knowing glances were silent threats, reminders of her humiliation. Xiao Cheng's presence was a living nightmare for both Shinji and Meng Jin. She grew sleepless, her health deteriorating, her body wasting away. Watching his wife wither, Shinji felt suffocated by helplessness. Fear and anxiety loomed like a dark cloud over their family. In the end, Shinji decided to confront Xiao Cheng and put an end to it. They met in a deserted alley. The air was thick with tension. Xiao Cheng stood there, his expression smug, his eyes gleaming with contempt. He showed no remorse and even threatened to expose Meng Jin's past if Shinji dared to intervene. His arrogance ignited the rage burning inside Shinji. In that instant, his desire for vengeance overwhelmed all restraint. After days of careful planning, Shinji acted on the night of September 5th. He knew Xiao Cheng would be drinking at a colleague's house, a colleague who also worked with Shinji. Consumed by fury, hatred, and fear, Shinji resolved to commit the irreversible act. At around 10 p.m., Shinji quietly approached Xiao Cheng's house. In the darkness, he pried the door open, each sound echoing in the still night. Inside, Xiao Cheng lay in a drunken sleep, unaware of his impending fate. Shinji stepped forward, his eyes blazing with determination and wrath. Without hesitation, he wrapped his hands around Xiao Cheng's neck, his fingers trembling with fury. The surge of strength from his rage left Xiao Cheng powerless to resist. Moments later, his final breath faded into the night. After the murder, Shinji called Meng Jin. She arrived, tense and trembling, carrying a large, thick blanket from their home. Together, they wrapped Xiao Cheng's body tightly in the blanket, concealing the evidence of their crime. That night, under the cover of darkness, they transported the body to the train tracks. They staged the scene to look like a suicide, leaving the body to be struck by the oncoming train, a method others had used to end their own lives. They believed their plan was flawless, that no one would uncover the truth hidden in the shadows. But they made critical mistakes. The discarded blanket near the scene was an undeniable clue. The strand of hair found on the blanket was the key that unlocked the truth. They underestimated the police's investigative skills and attention to detail. Subsequent investigation revealed another cruel irony. Xiao Cheng had not been stalking Meng Jin. His presence near their home was because his new girlfriend lived nearby. A tragic coincidence with devastating consequences. When all the secrets came to light, the court sentenced Liang Shinji to life in prison for murder. Meng Jin received a 15-year sentence as an accomplice. Two people who once sought solace in each other's despair now paid a steep price for their tragic choices. This case reveals the darkest corners of the human soul. When love twists into hatred, when secrets become unbearable burdens, tragedy becomes inevitable. Jealousy, fear, and uncontrolled emotions set off a chain of heartbreaking events, engulfing two families in sorrow and loss. What do you think about the perpetrator and the victim in today's case? Share your thoughts in the comments below so we can discuss together. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the Decoder Box channel so you won't miss any thrilling cases from around the world. Goodbye, and see you in the next video.